Where do you think you're going? What do you think you're doing? Oh, I just thought I might use an Android. Android? Bam! Elbow smash! War! What is it good for? Well, in the case of the tech war between Apple and Facebook, it's good at establishing supremacy between two titans. Who will win the tech war? Facebook, whose model relies on spying, or Apple, whose model relies on trapping you in a loop of hardware, products, and control of your, well, basically your whole life. Apple's winning with me. I've already got their laptop, I've got their phone, and I like their logos. And what about their new advert? It's so cool. It's so friendly. Let's have a look at it.
Felix?
Apple have introduced a new facility on their iPhone where you can stop people tracking you. This has enraged Facebook, understandably, because their whole business model is dependent upon tracking you. So now we're in a kind of Apple-Facebook tech war. Of course, Apple aren't doing this because like, hey, we care about you. We care about your privacy. They've just worked out that it's in the air, in the ether. People are talking about privacy, privacy, privacy. How can we make money out of this whole privacy problem we've helped create? Well, we could now offer people the privacy that is their birthright. I like it.
Name?
Felix.
Date of birth?
November 5th, 1986.
Notice that it establishes you straight away in a familiar yet aspirational situation, the purchase of a coffee. You might not be old enough to remember when people started first drinking those coffees, they made fake coffee cups to look like takeaway coffee cups because having one of those takeaway coffee cups was in itself a kind of status symbol. The first thing they do is they establish us in a situation with an attractive young man, a cool and approachable barista, and we see what the narrative of the ad is, i.e. you are being tracked, you are being followed, primarily by Facebook, one of Apple's primary competitors in the global tech wars.
Tracking current location.
Can I have a taste of your ice cream?
Here's what you spent last month.
Crumbs from your table.
I mean, it's beautiful because these people, Apple, they know branding, perhaps better than anyone on the planet. Here we are, ordinary bods, picking apart their stuff, analysing it, but you're dealing with, like, you know, and it pains me to say it, geniuses, people that know how to make beautiful commercials, know how to cast them immaculately. That's not even dealing with what they actually do, create tech, you know? Branding itself is about attaching ideas that don't really belong to the product in order to make the product more appealing. And the brilliant rendering of the idea that you're being followed by all these brands that are tracking you and physicalizing that, telling the story of that through this advert is so clever. But of course, to demonstrate Apple's business model using similar narrative techniques, this poor guy would have to be locked in a room only with Apple products, not able to get out of the room without Apple say so. The ghost of Steve Jobs and Tim Cook would have him sort of in prison somewhere going, where do you think you're going? What do you think you're doing? Oh, I just thought I might use an Android. Android? Bam! Elbow smash!
Can I interfere in your crisis? Can you hear the people behind
This will
me?
help with the itching.
A broader critique of capitalism is that capitalism is able to mobilize anti-capitalist tropes even within its own advancing commercial entities. i.e. here, a tech company is critiquing the idea of tech intrusion, but it can do so safely because Apple's power is almost beyond reproach. Indefatigable Apple. They can't be brought down. They can confidently attack the grey-clad followers, a variety of colours and stuff. But look at the colour palette that they're using. Only our hero is dressed outside of that colour palette. Everyone else is sort of grey and anonymously observing them. There's some interesting data's come out of this. Tim Cook recently said, referring to Facebook, if businesses are built on misleading users, on data exploitation, on choices that are not choices at all, it does not deserve our praise, it deserves reform. This sort of reminds me of like colonial wars around the discovery of what was then called the New World. It weren't new to the people that were living there, of course, it was the world. But you know, when America was colonized by Britain, Spain, Portugal, Germany, etc., they were not only wars going on between those nations, but also between ideologies. A similar war is taking place now, but in the sort of the space now is consciousness itself, as has been brilliantly examined in a variety of documentaries that you don't need me to tell you about. But now Apple have reached the point where it's safe to go up against what would have been the kind of an uneasy alliance under the general umbrella of other tech companies. They're making the jump into, like, we can go out against them. You know, when there's, like in movies, gangland wars, and like there's the five families have uneasy truces and territories. Like, we can yield to Facebook because they don't make hardware, they don't make phones and laptops and stuff, so we'll allow them to follow our users. But now this is the moment where they've gone, hang on a minute, we can kill Facebook now. So Facebook, at least in sort of, I would say, Anglophonic, Western and European sort of style old countries, call it what you will, I'm just not sure if that's the correct terms, you know, Facebook's in trouble. But Facebook, of course, as you know, has all of these new markets where possibly, I'm assuming, because I'm not an exec in a tech company, that Facebook are making alliances with sort of tech companies and phone providers and network providers and all that stuff. And like, you know, we know, like in some countries out in Indonesia, as soon as you get your phone, it's already got Facebook on. And perhaps this is a response to that kind of stuff. So Facebook has warned that the app update could cut the money earned through its ad network by half, hitting, and this is the sad bit, you know who's going to be hit, don't you? It's small businesses. And you know Facebook cares about, you know, that big business, that big, inconceivably big business, Facebook. You know what they care about? Small businesses. All they do, they get up, oh, how can we help small businesses today? They're very much like the adorable folk in this advert, just going through life, trying to help small businesses. I'm not suggesting that any individual human beings that work at Facebook or indeed at Apple or anything other than human beings like you or me, but it seems that their systemised objectives, when they come commensurately together, do have, on the whole, a negative impact on ordinary folk and perhaps the world at large. And that's not because of Facebook or Apple, that's because of the prerogative for profit. If you have the abstract idea of the accumulation of profit of material gains overwhelming all other ideas, it's obviously going to have a negative impact.
Can I have a taste of your ice cream? Can I lick the crumbs from your table? No, mind your own business.
I'd have kept the guy from the coffee shop in the beginning, he seemed like a laugh.
Why don't you mind your own business? Why don't you mind your own business?
Privacy, that's iPhone. Even if Apple's primary transgression against our kind isn't with regard to privacy, you know, you don't need me to tell you that the materials mined in order to make the products, the taxes avoided in order to serve the shareholders, the treatment of various workers the world over. Don't you remember? It seems like a lifetime ago, and for some of us it was, like that, where they had to put nets up in the factories in China. Like, people are killing themselves, put a net up. You know, again, I'm personally beyond the point of critiquing the ethics and morals of huge corporations, recognizing that at the end of the day it's just human beings. But we do need to address the underlying values that sprout these kind of systems, because otherwise we're in serious trouble. But I tell you now, the most interesting thing for me about this is the new feature on the iPhone, the ability to stop people tracking you. That's appealing. A lot of it, I like that idea. I don't even like them thinking you have to go, I agree on the screen too many times, and the I agree becomes too big and fills the screen. I hate all that crap. I'll take pressing a button for that, and that's going to cut, you know, all sorts of people out of my, you know, I go on that DuckDuckGo sometimes, and it tells you, you were being tracked by these people. We've stopped all of them, like, tracking you. It's weird, isn't it? They create the problem of you being followed, and then they sort of solve the problem of you being followed, and the whole thing is like a racket. You get slapped round the face over here, then over here. Like, you know, what's next? Like Facebook, I suppose, are going to start giving out free phones. I don't know. Who knows where this tech war will lead? But you can see the way that Apple positions itself. It's for young, up-and-coming, affluent people that have got money, really. It's not easy to buy one of those things, let's face it. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Anyway, Facebook said Apple's being hypocritical because it will force businesses to turn to subscriptions and other in-app payments for revenue from which Apple takes a cut. Well, that's just maybe, but we're living in a material world and I am a material girl. And this seems like a good time to tell you that Luminary, the podcast which I do, is now available on Apple. So me, even while I'm telling you about the complexities, contradictions and apparent hypocrisy that exist when immersed in a tech world, I'm also telling you that if you want to get my podcast from Luminary, you can get it off Apple. You don't have to. You might think, no, I don't want to get involved in that crazy world, and I would totally respect you for it. But if you like my podcast, Under the Skin, and Dave Chappelle's new podcast, and my meditation podcast, you should check it out. And if you like this video, like it. If you want to subscribe, subscribe. Also, sign up to my mailing list and note that I am doing live work. Let me know what you think about this, and let's stay in touch with each other, you and me. And if you don't, I'll be sort of following you about like a twirly-tashed barista.